Have you ever had a premonition? Have you dreamed of a specific event, only to later see it manifested in your physical reality? This leads us to wonder if by observing an event before it occurs in three-dimensional space, life on Earth must proceed according to a plan, and this plan must exist somewhere in another dimension accessible to us. If the events observed were not in this world when they were seen, then to be perfectly logical, they must have existed outside of this world, and whatever is there to be seen before it happens here must be predetermined from the perspective of an awakened being in a three-dimensional world. So the question arises, are we capable of altering our future? The following information explores the inherent possibilities that human beings have for this purpose. Once altered, the future forms a determined sequence again, starting from the point of interference resulting in a future consistent with the alteration. The flexibility of the human future stands out, shaped more by attitudes than by actions. The cornerstone of all this lies in the concept one has of oneself. Experiences and actions are a direct result of this concept. Changing one's concept of oneself automatically alters the future. Assumptions, seemingly insignificant, can have a considerable impact. So it is crucial to review their value and recognize their creative power. All changes take place in consciousness. Our future is predetermined by our preconceived ideas. Therefore, to influence and alter it, the change must occur in consciousness. Although the future is predetermined in advance, it has various possible outcomes and paths at every moment in our lives. We have the choice of which of the several futures we will choose. The world can be viewed from two distinct perspectives: a natural approach and a spiritual approach. Ancient teachers called one the carnal mind, and the other the mind of Christ. We can distinguish them as the common awakened consciousness governed by our senses, and a controlled imagination governed by desire. Natural vision confines reality to the moment called now. For natural vision, the past and the future are merely imaginary. Spiritual vision, on the other hand, sees the contents of time. It shows that events are distinct and separated like objects in space. The past and the future are a present whole. For the spiritual viewpoint, what is mental and subjective for the natural being is concrete and objective for the spiritual being. The habit of seeing only what our senses allow leaves us completely blind to what we could otherwise see. To cultivate the ability to see the invisible, we must deliberately detach our minds from the evidence of the senses and focus our attention on an invisible state, mentally feeling and perceiving it until it has all the characteristics of reality. Serious and focused thought directed in a particular direction excludes other sensations and makes them disappear. We only need to concentrate on the desired state to be able to see it. The habit of withdrawing attention from the region of sensation and concentrating it on the invisible develops our spiritual perspective and allows us to penetrate beyond the world of the senses and see what is invisible. A little practice will convince us that by controlling our imagination, we can restructure our future in harmony with our desire. Desire is the primary impulse of action. We couldn't move a single finger if we didn't have the desire to move it. No matter what we do, we follow the desire that dominates our mind. At that moment, when we break a habit, our desire to break it is greater than our desire to continue with that habit. By assuming the feeling of one's desire fulfilled, and then living and acting in accordance with this conviction, the individual alters the future in harmony with their assumption. Assumptions awaken what they affirm. When the individual assumes the feeling of their desire fulfilled, their four-dimensional being finds ways to achieve that result, discovers methods for its realization. There is no clearer definition of how we achieve our desires than by imagining in detail the experience we would have if we fulfilled our goal. This experience of the result not only clarifies but also generates the necessary means for its realization to the undisciplined mind. Assuming a state denied by the senses seems very difficult to understand how the individual shapes their future in harmony with their assumptions. We must know what we mean by a dimensionally larger world, because it is to a dimensionally larger world that we go to alter our future. The observation of an event before it happens implies that the event is predetermined from the viewpoint of the person in the three-dimensional world. Therefore, to change the conditions here in the 3 dimensions of space, we must first change them in the 4 dimensions of space. People don't exactly know what a dimensionally larger world means, and they would undoubtedly deny the existence of their dimensionally larger being. They are familiar with the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height, and believe that if there were 1/4 dimension, it should be as obvious as the dimensions of length, width, and height. A dimension is not a line, it is any way in which a thing can be measured that is entirely different from all other ways, that is to measure a 4-dimensional solid. We measure it in any direction except that of its length, width, and height. Is there another way to measure an object other than its length, width, and height? Time measures my life without employing these 3 dimensions of length, width, and height. There is no such thing as an instantaneous object. Its appearance and disappearance are measurable. It endures for a specified time. We can measure its duration without using the dimensions of length, width, and height. Time is definitely 1/4 way of measuring an object. The more dimensions an object has, the more substantial and real it becomes. A straight line which is entirely in 1 dimension gains shape, mass, and substance. By the addition of dimensions, what new quality would time, the 4th dimension, bring that would make it vastly superior to solids, as solids are to surfaces, and surfaces are to lines? Time is a means for changes in experience because all changes require time. The new quality is variability. Notice that if we bisect a solid, its cross-section would be a surface. By bisecting a surface we get a line, and by bisecting a line, we get a point. This means that a point is nothing more than a cross-section of a line, which in turn is nothing more than a cross-section of a surface, which in turn is nothing more than a cross-section of a solid, which, if taken to its logical conclusion, is nothing more than a cross-section of a 4-dimensional object. We cannot escape the conclusion that all 3-dimensional objects are nothing more than cross-sections of 4-dimensional bodies. This means that when I meet you, I encounter a cross-section of your 4-dimensional being, the 4-dimensional being that is not seen. To see the 4-dimensional being, I must see every cross-section or moment of your life, from birth to death, and see them all. As coexisting, my focus should encompass the entire range of sensory impressions you have experienced on Earth. And beyond those you may encounter, I should see them not in the order you have experienced them, but as a present whole, because change is the characteristic of the 4th dimension. I should see them in a state of flow as a living and animated whole. If we have all this clearly fixed in our minds, what does it mean for us in this 3-dimensional world? It means that if we can move in the length of time, we can see the future and alter it as we wish. This world which we believe is so solidly real is a shadow from which and beyond which we can pass at any moment. It is an abstraction of a more fundamental and dimensionally larger world. A more fundamental world abstracted from an even more fundamental and dimensionally larger world, and so on to infinity. The individual can test the existence of a dimensionally larger world simply by focusing attention on an invisible state and imagining, seeing, and feeling it. If he remains concentrated on that state, his current surroundings will disappear, and he will awaken in a dimensionally larger world, where the object of his contemplation will be seen as a concrete and objective reality. We do this every night when we dream. Now I leave you with a technique to put all this into practice. The first step to change the future is desire. That is, you must define your goal. You must know definitively what you want. The second step is to build an event that you believe you will encounter after the fulfillment of your desire, an event that involves the fulfillment of your desire. The third step is to immobilize the physical body and induce a condition similar to sleep, entering a state of meditation, lie down on a bed or relax in a chair. Then, with your eyes closed and your attention focused on the action you intend to experience, mentally feel that you are right in the middle of the proposed action. Imagining all the time that you are really performing the action here. And now you must always engage in the imaginary action, not just observe the scene as a spectator, but live it in the first person. It is important to always remember that the proposed action must be one that follows the fulfillment of your desire. And furthermore, you must feel within the action until it has all the vividness and sharpness of reality. For example, imagine you want to win a lottery prize. Telling a family member or your partner about it would be an event you would probably do after the fulfillment of your desire, having selected this action as the one you will experience in imagination. Immobilize the physical body and induce a state close to sleep, a drowsy state. But one in which you can still control the direction of your thoughts, a state in which you are effortlessly attentive. Now, imagine telling your partner and she joyfully congratulates you and gives you a strong hug. First, feel that hug as solid and real, then engage in an imaginary conversation with her in harmony with the action. Do not visualize yourself at a distance in a point in space, nor at a distance at a point in time being congratulated for your good fortune. Instead, make that place here and the future. Now, this future event is a reality right here in a dimensionally larger world. And although it may seem incredible now, in a dimensionally larger world, is equivalent to here in the common three-dimensional space of everyday life. The difference between feeling in the action here and now, and visualizing an action as if you were on a movie screen, is the difference between success and failure. The difference will be appreciated. If you now visualize yourself going up a staircase, then with closed eyes, imagine that there is a staircase right in front of you, and feel that you are really climbing it. You must feel that same sensation in any of your visualizations and assumptions. Desire, physical immobility on the verge of sleep, and imaginary action, in which the feeling of self predominates here and now, are not only important factors for changing the future, but are essential conditions for consciously projecting our spiritual being. In reality, we are doing the action in the four-dimensional world, and we will see it represented again in the future here in the three-dimensional world. The idea must be kept in the field of attention without any sensory effort on our part. With the least effort, we must saturate the mind with the feeling of the fulfilled desire. The most effective way to embody a desire is to assume the feeling of the fulfilled desire. And then, in a relaxed and drowsy state, repeat it over and over like a lullaby. Use any short phrase that implies the fulfillment of our desire, such as, "Thank you," as if addressing a higher power for having done it for us. However, if we seek a conscious projection to a dimensionally larger world, then we must keep the action going until we fall asleep. Experience in imagination with all the vividness of reality. What would be experienced in the flesh if you achieve your goal? And eventually you will find it in the flesh as you found it in imagination. Feed the mind with premises, that is, with assumptions that are presumed to be true. Because assumptions, even if unreal to the senses, if persisted in until they have the feeling of reality, will become facts. For an assumption, all means that promote its fulfillment are good. They influence the behavior of all by inspiring all movements, actions, and words that tend toward its fulfillment.